Namaste. Hello learners. My name is Balaganapati Devarakonda. I'm teaching philosophy at the University of Delhi. Today I'm going to introduce some of the philosophical systems of classical Indian tradition. How do we look at our own philosophical tradition and how do we understand them deeply is one of the major concerns that would be dealt with in this brief lesson that we are going to take it up now. When we look at Indian philosophical systems, it is in general understood to be of two different categories. One category which accepts the authority of the Vedas, and the other category which doesn't completely accept the authority of the Vedas. Okay. Even among those schools which have accepted the authority of Vedas, have accepted partially, not completely. So we make in general a distinction between orthodox and heterodox schools of Indian tradition, which are also considered to be or termed as Astika and Nastika Darsanas. Okay. Nastika Darsanas, or schools which do not accept the authority of the Vedas, are said to be Charvaka, Jainism and Buddhism. And Astika Darshanas are said to be of in three pairs. There are six systems, but they are in pairs. Nyaya-Vaiseshika together, Samkhya Yoga together, and then Mimamsa, which is divided into Purva-Mimamsa and Uttara-Mimamsa. So that is how we have six Astika Darshanas. The concern here, though we sometimes use loosely theistic, atheistic schools, the concern here is not the existence of God, rather the concern that makes this distinction possible is the authority of the Vedas. Okay, so let us briefly look at each one of the systems. I know it's difficult to completely discuss all the six systems within a short span of one lesson, but let us look at some of the interesting and important aspects of each of the systems, each of these philosophical systems, and each of the philosophical systems now. Let us begin with Nyaya-Vaiseshika. These two schools are often treated together due to complementary focus, which is Nyaya dealing with epistemology and Vaisheshika dealing with ontology. So let's begin with Nyaya Darshana, school of logic and epistemology that we have in Indian tradition. Nyaya Darshana, one of the six classical schools of Indian philosophy, derives its name from the Sanskrit root ni, meaning to lead or to guide. And it connotes a systematic path of reasoning. The school is primarily concerned with epistemology, the theory of knowledge, logic, argumentation, and metaphysical categories, offering a rigorous framework for critical thinking and rational inquiry. The foundational text of this tradition is Nyaya Sutra, attributed to sage Gautama, also known as Akshapada, and is believed to have been composed between 2nd century BCE and 2nd century CE. This tradition was later developed by thinkers such as Vatsyayana, Udyotakara, Jayanta Bhatta, and eventually systematized into Navya Nyaya by Ganges Upadhyaya in the 13th century. The central aim of Nyaya is the attainment of liberation or moksha through the removal of ignorance by means of valid knowledge, prama. According to Nyaya Sutra 111, there are 16 categories or padarthas that structure philosophical inquiry, such as pramana, means of knowledge, prameya, objects of knowledge, samsaya, doubt, prayojana, purpose, and so on. Among these, the epistemological concern is primary. Nyaya recognizes four valid means of knowledge, pramanas: pratyaksha, perception; anumana, inference; upamana, comparison or analogy; and shabda, verbal testimony, particularly that of reliable persons or the Vedas. These pramanas help the seeker discern truth from error and attain certain knowledge about the world and beyond. Nyaya's ontology, theory of reality, accepts the existence of various categories of real entities, often overlapping with Vaisheshika metaphysics. Key among these are dravya, substance, guna, quality, karma, motion, samanya, universal, vishesha, particularity, samavaya, inherence, and abhava, non-existence. These categories explain both the structure of the world and the way it can be known. Particularly significant is Nyaya's five-member syllogism, Panchavayava Vakya, a sophisticated form of logical reasoning comprising the pratigna, proposition, hetu, reason, udaharana, example, upanaya, application, and nigamana, conclusion. For example, the hill has fire, pratigna, because it has smoke, is hetu, like a kitchen. Udaharana, the hill has smoke, upanaya, therefore the hill has fire, nigamana. Nyaya also offers a nuanced theory of error, Khyātivāda, called Anyatha Khyati, which explains illusion as misperception, such as mistaking a shell for silver not as a projection of the mind, but as a confusion based on previous experience. Central to Nyaya's soteriology is the view that suffering, dukkha, arises due to ignorance, mithya jnana, which leads to wrong actions and bondage. As Nyaya Sutra 112 articulates, dukkha, janma pravurti dosha mithya jnana utpattihi. Liberation is achieved by reversing this chain, eliminating ignorance through valid knowledge and correct reasoning. Although highly rational and analytic, Nyaya remains a theistic school. It acknowledges the authority of the Vedas and provides logical arguments for the existence of Ishvara, especially in the later Navya Nyaya phase. Here, logic and theism are synthesized, with God understood as the intelligent cause of the universe, inferred through design and moral order. In this way, Nyaya stands as a bridge between rational inquiry and spiritual liberation, affirming that truth, when carefully discerned, is path to freedom. And this is how we look at the philosophy of Nyaya. And let me take you forward to Vaisheshika Darsana, which is an allied school of Nyaya. Vaisheshika Darsana, attributed to sage Kanada, who is also called Uluka, is one of the earliest systematic philosophies in the Indian tradition. Its name derives from the term Vishesha, means particularity, indicating its core concern with distinguishing and classifying the fundamental realities of existence. Vaisheshika offers an ontological framework that identifies and organizes all that exists into distinct categories called padarthas, making it one of the most profound contributions to the Indian knowledge system in terms of metaphysics, logic, proto-scientific thought. The school begins with a clear epistemic and metaphysical aim, liberation, moksha, through accurate knowledge of the real. The very first sutra sets the tone, dharmaha jnananam abhyudaya nisreyasa hetuhu. The phrase the sutra emphasizes that dharma is the cause of both material prosperity, abhyudaya, and spiritual liberation, nisreyasa. This emphasizes Vaisheshika's practical spiritual orientation. It is not merely theoretical, but aimed at guiding life through a correct understanding of reality. Kanada's system classifies reality into 7 categories: dravya, substance; guna, quality; karma, action or motion; samanya, universality; vishesha, particularity; samavaya, inherence; abhava, non-existence, which was added later. The second sutra directly introduces these: padarthaha, dravya, guna, karma, samanya, vishesha, samavayaha. The categories are substance, quality, action, generality, particularity, and inherence. Each category represents a way in which something can exist or be known. The category of dravya includes not only physical elements like earth, water, fire, and air, but also akasha, space, kala, time, disha, direction, manas, mind, and atman, self. Vaisheshika is notable for its atomistic theory, asserting that all physical matter is composed of paramanus, called atoms, which combine to form complex bodies. This makes it one of the earliest philosophies in the world to articulate a theory of atomicity. A key philosophical contribution of Vaisheshika is theory of inherence, called samavaya, explaining how qualities and actions reside in substances and how parts constitute wholes. This helps explain permanence in change, unity in diversity, a central concern in Indian metaphysics. The school also accepts a realist pluralism, affirming that both substances and their qualities exist independently of the mind, and that knowledge arises from correspondence between thought and reality. The goal of knowing the padarthas is ultimately soteriological, to dispel ignorance and attain liberation. Another important sutra that we find in Vaisheshika is Tat Guna Karma Samanya Visesha Samavaya Vadravyam. That which possesses quality, action, generality, particularity, and inherence is substance. This classification system had wide influence not just in metaphysics and logic, but also in grammar, medicine, ritual theory, and ontology across Indian traditions. In conclusion, Vaisheshika is a cornerstone of Indian intellectual tradition, offering a framework that is scientific, analytical, spiritually oriented. Its precise categorization of reality and emphasis on liberation through knowledge reveal the integral unity of metaphysics, epistemology, and ethics in Indian philosophy. Now, having looked at the joint systems, Nyaya and Vaiseshika, let us now move to other pair, Samkhya and Yoga. Let us begin with Samkhya philosophy. Samkhya Darsana is, it represents dualism of spirit and matter, and the founder of the school is Kapila. And Ishwara Krishna's Sankhya Karika is the primary text of this philosophical system. The very beginning, the very first sutra of Sankhya Karika begins with Dukkhatraya Abhigadat Jignasa. The inquiry, Jignasa, is into Dukkhatraya, which is Adhyatmika, Adi Bhautika, and Adi Daivika. Adhyatmika is self-caused. Adi Bhautika is caused by the other beings that are around you, and Adi Daivika are caused by things which are not under your control, which can be called supernatural, etc. So there are three kinds of dukkhas, dukkhatraya, and getting deep into inquiring into these three dukkhas so that we can get rid of these dukkhas is the concern of Sankhya Darsana. In order to develop its theory, its philosophical foundations, it begins with by presenting dualism of Purusha and Prakriti. Purusha, which is consciousness, eternal, pure, separate from material reality. It is the subject and it is the experiencer as well. Counterpart of this Purusha is Prakriti within this dualistic framework, and Prakriti is considered to be the nature, the material world comprising the three gunas, Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. It is the object and the experienced. Interaction between Prakriti and Purusha creates the evolution, instigates the evolution, and this evolution and involution is a process, cyclical process that goes on. The liberation of Purusha occurs through the recognition of its separation from Prakriti, leading to moksha. And Prakriti is to be understood in a proper way. Prakriti is said to be a combination of three gunas: Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas are the constituents of Prakriti. So, which means there is no Prakriti beyond these three gunas. And these three gunas together form Prakriti. Sattva is considered to be balance, purity, and harmony, and it is associated with wisdom, clarity, and goodness. Similarly, Rajas is associated with desire, action, and attachment, and it is a principle of activity, motion, and passion. Tamas, the third guna, is associated with delusion, confusion, and sloth. It is a principle of inertia, darkness, and ignorance. These gunas and human experience, these gunas form the human experience. How human behavior and the world around us are shaped by the predominance of these gunas is in detail explained in this philosophical system. When these three gunas are in a state of equilibrium, which means gunanam samyamavastha, that is a state of dissolution. And when this gunanam samyamavastha, which is equilibrium, state of equilibrium is disturbed, then you will have evolution beginning. In evolution, Rajas vibrates itself and then instigates Sattva and Tamas to vibrate, and that is how there is a disturbance within this equilibrium that contributes to the evolutionary process, where each of these three gunas try to have heterogeneous change. They create heterogeneous change, each one of them trying to become the other, and that is how the evolutionary process begins. The theory of evolution has 24 tattvas which evolve from Prakriti. Prakriti evolves into Mahat, and Mahat to Ahankara, and then to Manas, and this becomes Indriyas, Tanmatras, Mahabhutas, and this is how theory of evolution comes into existence. So, what we find in this theory of evolution is the subtlest of the subtle trying to become grossest of the gross. In between, you will find all the aspects, all the subtle, gross kind of on a scale. If you see the subtlest of the subtle and grossest of the gross, in between, you will find this Mahat, Ahankara, Manas, Indriyas, Tanmatras, Mahabhutas, etc., taking their own place. One of the important aspects that we must know with regard to Samkhya is their theory of causation. They accept Satkaryavada, which is a response to the question like whether the effect pre-exists in its material cause. They argue that effect does pre-exist in its material cause. That is how it is called Satkaryavada, which means effect is not a new beginning. It already existed in its material cause, and it only manifests itself into the world, which it is already capable of. And through this theory, they explain the theory of evolution through Prakriti being the material cause of the world. The liberation according to Samkhya is Kaivalya, which is gained through discriminatory knowledge called Viveka. So, liberation is by discriminating Purusha from Prakriti, as Purusha wrongly identifies itself with the Prakriti, reflecting himself on the mirror, metaphorically using the mirror of Manas. And when the Purusha realizes that he is different from Prakriti, and he is independent entity of pure consciousness, then the liberation becomes possible. This is briefly a gist of Samkhya Darsana. Now, let us look at Yoga Darsana, which is ancillary Darsana of Samkhya, which talks about practical discipline for liberation. The founder of Yoga Darshana is Patanjali, and the principal text is Yoga Sutras. It is a practical counterpart of Sankhya, and its core concern is control of mental fluctuations to realize oneself. So that is how very second sutra of Yoga Sutra provides definition of yoga in terms of yoga chitta vritti nirodha, which means yoga as the cessation of modifications of the mind. So the mind is continuously modifying itself into different aspects. Different aspects could be objects or feelings or whatever, and it is required that you should work towards stopping of these modifications, and this cessation of the modifications is the one which leads to moksha or kaivalya. Now, the question that can be asked is, okay, if we restrict or cause the cessation of modifications of the mind, what is it that you get? Interestingly, in the very next sutra, which is 1.3 of Yoga Sutra, Patanjali says, you don't get anything if there is a cessation of modifications of the mind. What you get is your own self. You will be able to see yourself in a clear way. Tada drashtuhu swarupe avasthanam. That is how you would be able to see yourself grounded within yourself. So that is how, since it accepts the metaphysics of Sankhya, where there are two entities, Prakriti and Purusha, and Purusha is a conscious entity, Prakriti is a material entity, unconscious but dynamic, and unfortunately, the Purusha, the conscious entity, identifies itself with its reflection in the mind, which is an evolute of Prakriti, is to be understood to be different from the Prakriti. And when does that happen? Say, the metaphor that is provided is if there is a pond which has full of ripples, only when these ripples stop, when the water is calm, you will be able to see what is deep inside. Similarly, when the mental modifications are stopped, one would be able to see oneself as pure consciousness, different from the material world. So that is how Yoga Sutra prescribes a path, a way in terms of Ashtanga Yoga that leads to this kind of discernment. This Ashtanga Yoga has eightfold path, it's called in English. Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhi. This Samadhi is the final stage, ultimate stage, where cessation of mental fluctuations would be achieved. The goal of this yoga philosophical system is experiential realization of Purusha via meditative discipline. It accepts Ishvara as a special Purusha, not bound by karma. And the tools of liberation that are prescribed by this philosophical system are meditation, ethics, and concentration. Now, having discussed Sankhya and Yoga, let us move to last pair that we have that we need to discuss in terms of Mimamsa. Mimamsa is of Purva and Uttara. In order to discuss Mimamsa philosophical system, we need to have a look at Vedas and their constitution. Vedas are constituted in terms of two parts. I mean, we are understanding them as comprised of two parts like Karma Kanda, which emphasizes the importance of action, and Jnana Kanda, which emphasizes the importance of knowledge. Purva-Mimamsa is that philosophical system which gives importance to action over knowledge. And this is founded by Gemini, and the principal text that we have is Mimamsa Sutras. And the core concern of this philosophical system is the interpretation of the Vedic injunctions, Vidhi, and primacy of the ritual. They consider Veda to be eternal and authorless, apaurusheyas, and they accept 6 pramanas, pratyaksha, anumana, upamana, shabda, and ardhapatti and anupalabdhi. For them, God is not necessary, and they consider Vedas themselves as authority, ultimate authority. Okay. The goal of Mimamsa philosophical system is performance of rituals, karma, in order to attain swarga or heaven. The focus of this particular system is dharma, correct performance of duty, ritual, and which ensures cosmic and personal order. Mimamsa Sutra 112 emphasizes this point and argues that and defines dharma as that which is indicated by Vedic injunctions, chodhana. It implies that Vedic commands are the ultimate authority in determining righteous action. The key idea of this philosophical system is apurva, the unseen potency generated by human action, especially ritual action. Apurva in Mimamsa is understood to be apurvam nama kartavyam. The term apurva refers to the unseen metaphysical result of performing an action. It is the link between action and its future consequences, motivating ritualistic duties. These ideas are central to Purva-Mimamsa, which focus on karma and yajna rather than metaphysical speculation. Now, let's have a look at Uttara Mimamsa, which is also called Vedanta, which basically deals with metaphysics of self and Brahman. As I mentioned, if we look at Vedic constitution, the Karma Kanda and Jnana Kanda are two different portions, two integrated portions that Vedic texts have. If Purva-Mimamsa emphasizes action, Uttara-Mimamsa emphasizes knowledge over action. And we all know that Badarayana is the one who has organized Vedic literature for us, and he also wrote Brahma Sutras, which provide a gist of which provide an essence of all the Upanishads. The core concern of Uttara-Mimamsa is interpretative philosophy of Upanishads, nature of Brahman and Atman. Main texts that were taken up for discussion by Uttara-Mimamsakas or Vedantins or Prasthanatraya, Upanishads, Bhagavad Gita and Brahma Sutra were taken up for discussion. There are 3 main schools that we find within this Vedanta. Advaita Vedanta by Shankaracharya, which advocates non-dualism, and Visistadvaita Vedanta by Ramanujacharya, which advocates qualified non-dualism, Dvaita Vedanta by Madhvacharya, which advocates dualism. If we briefly look at these 3 schools, there are certain key concepts that we come across: Maya, Moksha, Jiva, Brahma, and the relation between Jiva and Brahma, relation between Jiva and the world, Brahman and the world, and the methodology that we find in these Vedantic systems is Shravana, Manana, Nitithyasa. Shankaracharya, advocating non-dualism, argues that Brahman alone is real and world is ultimately illusory, Maya, and self is non-different from Brahman, which is capsuled in the form of Brahma Satyam, Jagan Mithya, Jivo Brahmaiva Naparaha. Similarly, we find Visistadvaita Vedanta, Ramanujacharya arguing for non-dualism, qualified non-dualism, where he argues that Brahman has attributes, world and jiva are real and dependent on Brahman. This is a completely drastically different position from that of Shankaracharya. And we find Madhvacharya advocating dualism in terms of absolute distinction between Brahman and Jiva. The goal of all these three philosophical systems is possible through knowledge of the self as Brahman. I thought it would be interesting to explain through one of the Mahavakyas. The Upanishads have Mahavakyas like Tattvamasi, Aham Brahmasmi, Prajnanam Brahma kind of statements. Mahavakya is a statement which has embedded huge purport within its fold, which is open for widest possible interpretations. So, if we look at one of the Mahavakyas and try to understand the positions of Shankara and Ramanuja and Madhva, I thought it would be better understandable to the people, to the learners. For instance, there is a Vedic statement called Aham Brahmasmi, which is considered to be one of the Mahavakyas. Aham Brahma Asmi, which means I am Brahman. Okay. The same statement was interpreted in three different ways by each one of these philosophers that we have as Vedantins. For instance, Shankara interprets Aham Brahmasmi in this way. The real nature of the individual is pure Brahman, which means the individual is non-different from Brahman. And this realization leads to moksha through knowledge of non-difference, which means you are not different from the ultimate reality called Brahman. Whereas Ramanuja interprets the same statement, Aham Brahmasmi, in terms of the jiva is a body of Brahman, dependent yet inseparable. And liberation is through devotion and grace, not by identity. Okay, so that is how Ramanuja completely deviates from the interpretation of Shankara and provides a completely distinct interpretation of Aham Brahmasmi. Similarly, Madhva further deviates from Shankara and Ramanuja and interprets Aham Brahmasmi as in this way. It is false ego to equate self with Brahman. Only Vishnu is Brahman, and liberation is through eternal service to Vishnu, not union or identity. And this is how you will find the self, the world, and then the ultimate reality called Brahman coming together, and their relation, which is very well thoroughly discussed in Upanishads, being interpreted by three different philosophers, Shankaracharya, Ramanujacharya, Madhvacharya, in different ways. Now that we have looked at all these six philosophical systems, let us conclude by understanding the significance of each one of them. The six Astika Darsanas together form the foundational pillars of Indian knowledge tradition, each contributing unique insights into the nature of reality, knowledge, self, and liberation. Nyaya emphasizes rigorous logic and epistemology, offering tools for discerning valid knowledge. Vaisheshika presents a realist metaphysics through its classification of categories, laying early foundations for scientific and analytical thought. Samkhya offers a dualistic cosmology of Purusha and Prakriti, explaining the evolution of the cosmos and the path to liberation through discriminative knowledge. Yoga, as expounded by Patanjali, complements Samkhya by emphasizing disciplined practice and inner transformation for achieving Kaivalya, liberation. Purva-Mimamsa upholds the authority of the Veda and ritual action, karma, as essential for dharma and worldly prosperity, grounding Indian hermeneutics and ethics. Vedanta, particularly Uttara Mimamsa, culminates the philosophical journey by reflecting on the nature of Brahman and the identity of the self with the absolute, with various interpretations offered by Shankara, Ramanuja, and Madhva. Together, these systems do not present a single unified doctrine, but a rich pluralistic landscape that reflects the Indian ethos of dialogical reasoning, spiritual diversity, and intellectual depth, deeply enriching the Indian knowledge system as a whole. Thank you.